If I had to describe snipers in one word, it would be schizophrenic. Sniper is supposed to be a turret class that needs to be in cover to use its abilities. But for some reason, the devs gave it phase walk, 3 rolls, and a movement speed buff that turns it into Usain Bolt on spice. But that's not all. Engineering, which is designed as the AoE spec of the class, has the best burst in the game. Virulence is a dot spec, but still bursts harder than marksmanship. And marksmanship is supposed to be the burst spec, but actually has the best AoE out of the 3. And so, it is no surprise that sniper players are also a bit weird. In fact, there are 2 types of snipers. The ones whose character is named after some random general from World War II, and the ones with an anime character as their avatar, who are way too much into hardcore ERP with their pet Tauntaun. In Warzones, the primary roles of the snipers are A. Complaining about APPTs being overpowered, and B. Covering half the map in plasma probes, causing everyone to lag like it's 2002 and they're playing on ISDN using both lines while their mom is screaming at them to get off the internet so she can make a phone call. Most of their dev cooldowns need to be used proactively, meaning that a good sniper can outplay all of your bursts and a bad one is going to get one shot every time. And such is the duality of the sniper class. The sniper on your team will get globaled every time, and the sniper on the enemy team will one-shot your healer while perma-rooting and controlling your whole team. Now it is true, snipers have suffered quite a lot with 7.0 removing most of their CC options, which is why I avoided playing the class for a long time, that and me valuing my mental health. But that being said, engineering is in a very strong place right now, together with lightning, probably the best ranged burst spec in the game. So, in light of the recent buffs it received in patch 7.3, I decided to check it out once more. So, without further ado, here is my guide on engineering. So the thing that's unique about sniper in general is the use of cover. Going into cover grants you the hold position passive, which makes you immune to interrupts, means that you cannot be lapped to, and gives you 20% range defense, which is great against mercs. And also, being in cover, of course, enables the use of cover abilities, such as Cover Pulse, Suppressive Fire, or Entrench, which makes you immune to all CC. Then, of course, being a burst class, you have Explosive Probe, the biggest single target crit currently in the game. How it works is simply you put it on the target, you blow it up with your EMP discharge, and you combine that with targeting system, which turns it into an auto crit, and it does 130k a pop easy. Note that Explosive Probe will also leave 3 stacks of cluster bombs on your target, which you can then destroy by using any blaster attack. So that would be a series of shots, for example, to do some additional damage and also regenerate your energy. Looking at the legendary implants, there are 3 options that I like to use. The first one being locked and loaded. The tooltip for this one is actually wrong. It says it gives you 5% damage on ranged and tech attacks. What it actually does is it buffs your bonus damage by 5%. That's not quite the same. In fact, bonus damage stat is slightly worse than if it would be a flat 5% buff. So overall, this 5% extra bonus damage will probably give you around 2 to 3% extra overall damage, but still more damage is always good. So most of the time I run locked and loaded. The other 2 that you can use are improved targeting and stimulated. Improved targeting is pretty simple. It reduces the cooldown of your targeting systems, which again is your auto crit buff. So that means you have your big nuke ready more often. But then recently, hunting for big crits, I have also tried running the stimulated package. This one is a nice synergy with locked and loaded. It gives you 5% more mastery while you're under a stim pack, which should be all the time if you're playing PvP. So that again means bigger crits. It synergizes well with you already having an auto crit, so the extra mastery will just mean bigger numbers, which is of course good for a burst class. If you just want the biggest crits possible, then I would go for locked and loaded and stimulated. I have tested this, and even though stimulated and locked and loaded both give you alacrity instead of crit, the crits that you get from it will still be bigger compared to running improved targeting. On the side of tacticals, there's only one that I can really recommend, and that's the T0R0 Ionic Discharge. This is probably one of the 5 most overpowered tactical in the game. This one buffs the damage of your explosive probe by 50%, which is absolutely insane. The drawback is that it now only can explode from your EMP discharge, so you need to make sure that you use those two always in combination. But yeah, if you're playing engineering right now, this is the tactical you need to use, otherwise you are trolling. On the side of gear, nothing too interesting here. We are going to be using a standard set of 332 or 336 modded legacy gear. Mods from Hide and Seek make it easy to start this the way you want and use it on multiple classes. And on the side of relics and earpiece, you can simply go to the PvP vendor and grab these pieces that have crit on them, put some augments in them, and you're good to go. Looking at the stat distribution, you want to be running 2200 alacrity to reach the 1.4 GCD breakpoint and put the rest into crit. Most of your damage will be yellow, particularly the damage from EMP discharge and explosive probe are yellow damage, so we're not going to be running any accuracy in order to simply maximize our burst. So 2200 alacrity, the rest into crit, and you're good to go. Of course, on the side of stims, since you're not going to be using accuracy, we are going to be running the red stim for some extra mastery and power. Looking at the build, at level 23, you want to be running laser targeting. That's the left side option. Of course, 25% critical damage on explosive probe is crazy. It's a must. It's your biggest hitter. You're going to have an auto crit, so this is simply 25% more damage. Level 27, evasive maneuvers is mandatory. It turns countermeasures into a defensive cooldown. Otherwise, the ability is quite useless, only buffs your movement speed, so you need to take this one. Level 39, critical interrogation is the best for overall DPS. It can be annoying sometimes if targets will run out of line of sight and you need to move your interrogation probe to a different target. It's not as good in PvP as it maybe is in PvE, where you can just put interrogation probe on the boss and then keep casting forever. This will give you 10% crit, which is good, but it's still the option that I would recommend even for PvP, because the critical chance will actually be converted into extra critical damage if you're using your targeting systems, right? So that's the same, it works for all auto crits in this game. So this one will actually also buff your explosive probe by another 10%. The other options at level 39, calculated measures, increases the duration of your systems upgrade. Sure, that's nice, 10% more damage on your probes. Could be good, but I think not as good as the first one. And Shocking Blast, I also like this one. 20% more damage on Frag Grenade and EMP Discharge. So that's big for your burst. I think overall this is probably the best option for bursting. But if you're hunting for the crit world record, then you should go for Critical Interrogation instead. At level 43, Targeting Beam gives you a huge 20% crit damage on all attacks. This is insane, and another reason why we're stacking so much crit on engineering. Also, it makes it so that killing an enemy during your systems upgrade resets targeting systems. But keep in mind that you need to get the killing blow in order for this to have any effect. At level 51, we are taking Ballistic Dampers. It gives you a great 30% absorb. We're going to talk about that in a second when we come to the defensive cooldowns. Pillbox Sniper, it's 15 seconds off the Entrench cooldown. Gives you the bigger knockback on cover pulse and the knockback on the tail part of series of shots. It is nice, but I think Ballistic Dampers is overall too good to give up, because you are quite squishy and you need that extra tankiness. Level 64. Now, this is the new slot which got changed in patch 7.3. And here I recommend taking Vital Regulators, the left side option. So this one will heal you for 3% HP every 2 seconds. In the past, it used to be 2% every 3 seconds. So now they actually swapped it around and buffed it by a lot. And if you're staying in cover, just this talent alone will net you 5 to 6k HPS, which is pretty insane. One thing I noticed, however, the heal does proc your relics, which can be good, but make sure to not waste it before a fight, because you want your relics proc before you have your big crit opener. Level 64 option number 2, Over Prepared, is also nice because it gives you 45 seconds of your reset cooldown and a 15% DR for 15 seconds. But overall, your reset still has a very long cooldown. It depends. Maybe in Arena, you can run with this one to have some extra DR options. But seeing how many dot classes there are currently in the meta, I think Vital Regulators is the go-to option for most games. Level 68, you are going to be taking Holo Locate. This is of course the sniper equivalent to the sorcerer's face walk. It does have a longer cooldown compared to the sorcerer ability, but still it allows you to get out of a tight spot and is overall just a really strong cooldown. Option number 2, Ballistic Shield is great for team fighting, so use that if you have a healer and a tank to support you and you don't need your Holo Locate. At level 73, you can take Augmented Shields for the 30% extra on Shield Probe. That's okay, it's not a huge buff. What I like more about this talent is actually that taking damage during your entrench will reduce the cooldown of your reset. But then again, you don't really want to ever sit there and take damage as a sniper, unless you have a tank and 3 healers. Plus, this talent only works if you're in entrench, so maybe around half of the time. So overall, the cooldown reduction on your reset is not that good. And so instead, I would recommend that you take Seek Cover, which aligns more with the overall playstyle of the sniper, particularly when you're playing solo, and it just lets you run much better. It also gives you immunity to movement impairing effects and 50% movement speed when you leave cover during your entrench or after entrench ends. Okay, let's take a look at the fun stuff, how to do damage on engineering. Well, the first thing you want to do is put an interrogation probe on your unsuspecting victim. This one will enable your EMP discharge to be used, and it also gives you a 10% crit buff because of the talent we chose earlier. Next, you want to pop your targeting systems for the auto crit and put explosive probe on at the same time. That's of course because targeting systems does not cause a global cooldown. Third, we are using plasma probe. Why is that? Well, I think there's currently a bug in the game that's related to explosive probe when you are using the ionic discharge tactical. And it happens if you put the explosive probe on your target from more than 30 meters away. So if you're doing that and then you try to detonate it right in the next global cooldown with EMP discharge, it will miss 100% of the time. And that is because the explosive probe has a travel time that scales with your distance from the target. And if you're more than 30 meters away, the explosive probe will not be on the target by the time you use EMP discharge, which means that you will discharge, but explosive probe will not explode, and you will have wasted your complete opener. And that's why I recommend that you go this way. First go interrogation, then targeting systems explosive probe, plasma probe, and then EMP discharge. Doing it this way has another benefit. That is because if your target is affected by plasma probe when you EMP discharge, then they will be stunned for 2 seconds. Next, you want to use series of shots to detonate those cluster bombs, followed by a frag grenade, which will be free every time you use EMP discharge. Taking a look at the priorities, they are pretty similar to our opener. So just make sure that you have interrogation probe on someone. Keep in mind you can only have that on one person, but it's really important to keep up the 10% crit buff, and also interrogation probe does a lot of damage by itself. Next, you want to make sure that you keep your explosive probe on cooldown and align that with the cooldown of EMP discharge. Don't forget to put plasma probe on there in between. You can also reposition your plasma probe if people keep walking out of it, since it doesn't have a cooldown. Overall, plasma probe is very versatile and also one of the most important abilities because it also has a 50% slow, has no cooldown, 8 meter radius, and a 35 meter range. Finally, you want to prioritize frag grenade and series of shots for energy management. And if you're ever on the move and you have the energy for it, you can use corrosive dart. I don't really use snipe all that often, but it is nice. It helps you with stacking one of your passive, the electrified railgun. But overall for PvP, that is not the most important thing, and it just kind of happens passively, so you don't really need to track the stacks or anything like that, at least in PvP. Just make sure you keep interrogation probe on your main target, and then explosive probe and EMP discharge on cooldown. Taking a look at the defensive cooldowns, so ballistic dampers basically gives you a 30% absorb, which is quite nice. You get those automatically by simply going into cover. You will have 3 stacks that get consumed when you receive damage. And then every 6 seconds, you can get out of cover quickly and re-enter cover. It will refresh those stacks. That is probably your most potent defensive cooldown. But then again, you need to remember to leave cover briefly and re-enter cover. So it can be easy to forget about those. Secondly, you have shield probe, which gives you a small absorb, has a short cooldown. Overall, it's not the most impactful skill, but definitely don't be afraid to use this early. Finally, your roll. Here it is important to anticipate. You can use this, for example, to outplay a thermal detonator, which explodes a little bit more than 2 global cooldowns after the PowerTech puts it on you. So if you use your roll, which is officially called Cover to Escape, you will get a short immunity that actually the immunity lasts a little bit longer than you would think. So you can wait until the PowerTech puts the thermal detonator on you and then time it just right so that by the time it explodes, you are still immune from your roll. Roll, of course, is also great because it creates a gap and afterwards you will be in cover, meaning that melees cannot jump to you and PowerTechs cannot pull you. Countermeasures is your bread and butter defensive cooldown. It is good versus force and tech attacks and also makes you near immune to white damage. It has a short cooldown, so use this one frequently. Diversion reduces your enemy's accuracy as long as they stay in the zone. It is a ground targeted effect, so make sure to use it for yourself or peel for your teammates when they need it. But if you use it on yourself, please stay in it, don't roll out of it. And that's also why I have it in the list after your roll. So typically roll first. By the way, your countermeasures resets your roll so you can roll a second time. And then when you're out of rolls and you can't run anymore, use diversion on yourself and stay in it. The Warzone Adrenal is a consumable that is shared and usable by all classes. It gives you 15% damage reduction for 15 seconds. It has a rather lengthy cooldown of 3 minutes though, so make sure you use it wisely. Hololocate is your equivalent of the Sorcerer's Phase Walk. However, it does have a 2-minute cooldown, so much longer than the Sorcs. That being said, it is still very strong. Don't forget to place it before going into a fight, and also remember that you can click off the buff and reposition it should you ever need to move in a Warzone. Meticulous Preparation is your reset. Using this ability resets the cooldown of countermeasures, Shield Probe, Cover Pulse, which is your knockback, and Entrench. So make sure to use Prep after all of these are already on cooldown for maximum value. If you spec into Ballistic Shield, use it after your rolls and reset combo, because again, you want to stay in your Ballistic Shield, and also it has a rather lengthy cooldown of 3 minutes. The Med Pack is another consumable usable by all classes. You can use this only once per fight, but it is quite powerful. It will heal you for 35% of your HP. Last but not least, some tips. On all snipers, you can do a triple roll combo, which is of course roll, countermeasures, roll again, meticulous preparation, countermeasures, and do another roll. This is great for scoring in hardball or just getting away from a sticky situation. Tip number 2. Snipers get a buff when they are in cover, which is called Spotter. This one stacks over time and it makes it easier to detect stealthers. It works in a cone in front of you. So make sure that when you're defending a node, for example, you position yourself in a way that any approaching stealther has to come from your front side. Tip number 3. This is something that I actually also didn't know. But Adrenaline Probe will prolong your system's upgrade buff by 10 seconds. So this can be useful in order to get a reset on your targeting systems by securing a killing blow. Tip number 4. Cover Pulse is off the global cooldown, but it will interrupt channels such as Suppressive Fire. And finally, tip number 5. The sniper has 2 cover-related abilities. The first one being Crouch, which will make you take cover in place wherever you're standing right now. And the second ability is called Take Cover. You can find it in your Combat Proficiencies, Combat Style Abilities tab, and then just drag it onto your bar and keybind it. Take Cover will also crouch you if there's no cover point available, but if there is a cover point close, you will see this kind of green shadow, and if that's the case and you use Take Cover, it will roll you there. There's actually a spot in Hypergate where you can roll up the ledge on the rock side of the map, which can be quite nice to get away from melees chasing you. That's it for today, guys. Let me know in the comments below what class guide you want to see next. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to leave it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.